The following is an exclusive presentation of WI Garden Media, the voice of Garden Talk Radio. Coming up on the program today, we're going to discuss types of soil you have in your garden, what you should do or not do about it, as well as limited mobility gardening. We'll give you some options. Our guest is garden blogger Heather Blackmore, and we'll answer your garden questions. The hour is full, so join us.
You are listening to the most informationally packed hour of garden-focused radio in the country and on the internet with your host, husband and wife team Joey and Holly Baird. This is the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
And welcome to another edition of the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm your host, Joey Baird. Beside me is my wife, co-host, best friend, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
This program is for you, about you, to help your garden grow better, to maintain your landscape, grow healthier trees, make your grass look greener, as well as preserving what you grow. Want to be part of the program? Well, whether you're listening to us on one of the 20 AM or FM frequencies broadcasting our program here in 2023 through our parent website, which is the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, podcast replay or in-studio video replay, thank you so much. And you can participate by sending us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Or you can give us a call, toll-free, coast to coast, at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469. Holly, soil is the lifeblood of a garden. If you don't have good soil or have iffy soil, you're not going to have a very good harvest. You're going to have an iffy or sad harvest.
Absolutely, and you don't want an iffy or sad harvest.
Especially the work that you put into it.
Yeah, if you can avoid it, then you want to do something for your possibly not so good soil. And so there's many different types of soil, or there's a few different types of soil, and some of them you may have heard of, some of them may not. So clay soil, this is common in many areas.
You hear this. The red clay of Ohio or the South or Georgia, there's clay soils everywhere.
Yeah. And this is it's heavy soil, it's high in nutrients, it's just very dense.
The nutrients can't get released from it because of the density of that material. So you have to find some way to break up the clay soil to release that nutrients that your plants desperately need.
Yeah. So there are some options for that. We're going to talk about the types of soil first and then some options. So then we have sandy soil. This is light, dry, warm. It's low in nutrients. It's often acidic, and it drains very well.
All right.
So if you have clay soil in one part of your garden and sandy in the other, you can mix them up, and that's probably not very common. So then we have silt soils. This is a fertile but light, moisture retentive, easily compacted type of soil. And so it's kind of what you want. You want also a silt or a loam. A loam is a mixture of clay, sand, and silt. And you want to ideally have kind of the combination between the silt and the loam. We've talked about like loamy soil, right, and that's the ideal soil. And then peat soils are high in organic matter and moisture, like a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we have the chalky soil, which can either be light or heavy, but it's very alkaline.
So the go-to answer to, well, what's wrong with my soil? How do I fix it? Truck full of compost, organic matter, bring it in, mix it into the soil. Or the best answer, like this time of year in the fall time, bring it in and top dress it. Let it sit there, let the snow, let the rain, and the insects and the worms, everything, drag it down into the upper layers of your garden soil. People will do that a lot. They'll just broadcast it 1 or 2 inches and let it sit there, and by spring it like naturally is mixed in because of the insects and the rain and the snow. But there are other alternatives and additions to getting your soil back to a tilth that your plants will enjoy.
Absolutely. So there's a few things that you can do. And one thing is that, like a clay soil, you can break it up. You can add organic matter, whether that be compost, manure, anything that is a nice organic matter that's going to help break up those clumps and work through it. And that way it'll kind of break it down into crumbs and making it so that the water and nutrients held with the clay is able to give access to those roots.
It's like when you're making cookies and you need to incorporate the butter and the sugar and the flour together. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get that butter, which is the clay, to break down and incorporate into the other items, which is the compost and other materials that you're mixing in with the soil.
Exactly. That's a good analogy for that. So then sandy soil, I want to say it's kind of the opposite, but I don't want to.
It's the opposite extreme as the clay soil.
Yeah, it's the opposite extreme. So these are usually the lower nutrients, low in water. It's very draining. So what you can do is you can add organic matter to kind of help bind it a little bit more. So I guess the answer to both is like the same, because you're finding
a balance of absorption and drainage. So if you don't know if you got one or the other, here's what you do. You go out, take a shovel and dig about a 6-inch hole, diameter and depth, and then take and fill it with water, however you get the water. If it sits there a long time and this becomes a pond and it doesn't drain, you got clay soil. If it runs through and the faster you pour it in, the quicker it disappears, you've got sandy soil. If it sits there and you can gradually see it begin to absorb down into the soil, you're good to go.
Good to go. Yep. So then silt soils are made up of fine particles, and they can be easily compacted, and they are prone to washing away from erosion. So this is something that adding organic matter again is going to be the answer, because you're helping. Key word
today, fun word. What is Pee Wee Herman? What was the word of the day? Organic matter.
Organic matter. Yeah. So this is a good answer to a lot of things, but it's a matter of understanding it
and knowing where your organic matter is coming from. The safe source. Just don't grab anything that you can get. Make sure you know where it's coming from and the origins of that organic material. Otherwise, you may have more compounded problems down the road with chemicals or types of manure that you're mixing in, or toxicities that are being brought in. Know where it's coming from.
That's exactly it. You want to make sure you know where your organic matter is coming from. You want to make sure it's a good source and you're not adding to a problem when you think you're fixing it.
So, and again, when we talk about the compaction here, this is why many gardeners are encouraged not to walk where they're going to plant or grow. Either have raised beds or distinct grow areas and designated walk paths, so you're only compacting the areas that will never see any vegetation grow at all. The bed's 4 foot wide or smaller, so you can reach from both sides, and the only necessary compaction in which is happening is if you put your hand down to reach. You're not compacting by walking and walking and walking, and then causing this issue with the soil compositions.
Yep. So then chalky soil, this is alkaline, so you have to be careful about that. They may contain lumps of visible chalky white stone. You can't really acidify it, so if you can find plants that thrive in alkaline conditions, that's going to be ideal.
That's the higher spectrum of the 7 and above.
Yeah.
Lower 7 and below.
Yeah. So if you find out that you have chalky soil, you're probably better off building raised beds or growing in like pots or containers. It might not be worth the effort to add, or it's not really worth the effort to add organic matter or fight it by having to only grow alkaline or acidic.
How do you know what your soil is? You can't guess. You go to soilsavvy.com. Soilsavvy.com gives you a 14-point analysis of what your soil has and what it needs and what it doesn't need and how to fix or maintain what you got. Soilsavvy.com. That's the only way a reputable soil test. You can't go, well, that soil is brown, which means that's not how you do this.
It means it's brown.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
No, for real. And you can there's like little
DIY
soil tests where you add water and you shake it and it foams and blah, blah, blah.
But it's not the information is very limited.
It's very limited. It might tell you what kind of soil you possibly have, but you don't know for sure. And this will break down the nutrients. You might find out.
If you can't read color very well, there's colors that you have to match going, well, that means this. And if you have issues with differentiation of colors, you can be very off very quickly.
Well, in these days, something might look a different color on one screen than on another.
Hey, what color is this dress?
Exactly.
Well, with that being said, Holly, fall's getting in swing here, and you need seasonings. If you are a butcher, you're going to need the proper tools. If you're a hunter, WaltonsInc.com has all of that and more, except for the meat.
Yeah, we are brought to you today by our sponsor, Walton's Inc. We know you care about where your food comes from. Canning and preserving your fruits and vegetables is great, but what about the meat? At Walton's, you can get all the equipment, seasoning, and supplies to make sausage, jerky, and any other meat product your way to your high standards. You want to make snack sticks that people will actually eat. You go to meatjuststicks.com. They have an informational site to help you. And Walton's has a full line of their own meat grinders, mixers, sausage stuffers to help you go from animal to edible. Walton's everything but the meat. You can use code GROW50 GROW50 at waltonsinc.com. GROW50 to save 10% off your order of $50 or more.
And we've heard you. They've heard you. They're returning for another year in 2024. And we are very thankful that you support our sponsors and allow them to know that you listen to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. We'll be right back with mobility issues in the garden. We've got some options. This is the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show.
Have a garden question? Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now 1-800-927-SHOW.
Grip 6 produces American-made products with sleek designs and quality materials. Based and manufactured in Utah, they have high-quality and durable products that last a lifetime. They're built beyond tough. Their wool socks come from Rocky Mountain source materials, are soft and comfortable, keep your feet warm and dry, and come with a lifetime guarantee. Even for the most sensitive toes, these socks are made for everyone. High-quality wool socks make a huge difference for happy feet. They fit in with all the many things you do from around the house to the outdoors and beyond. They are comfortable and long-lasting. These socks are great for gardening because they keep your feet so comfortable no matter the conditions outside. It's hard to overstate how amazing these feel to have warm, dry feet as you work in your garden. Designed and manufactured in-house for the best results and quality every time. When you purchase from Grip 6, you're supporting long life cycle products and American-made manufacturing. Check out their belts, wallets, and socks at grip6.com. Use coupon code RADIO15 to save 15% off your order at grip6.com. Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online.
Jung Seed Company is a family-owned and operated gardening company since 1907, with the largest selection of seeds and plants online. Use coupon code 10TG23 to receive 10% off your order at jungseeds.com. Again, that coupon code is 10TG23. Wisconsin Greenhouse Company has custom-made greenhouses to suit your needs. Grow year-round. Strongest greenhouses that will last a lifetime. From agricultural to lounging to entertaining. For more information, go to wisconsingreenhousecompany.com.
Dig planting holes from a comfortable standing position. Step, twist, pull, and plant. Visit ProPlugger.com.
You put a lot of time and energy in your garden, but without a rescue Japanese beetle trap, you can kiss that hard work goodbye. Asparagus annihilated. Raspberries ravished. Green beans, forget about it. Get those little invasive pests out of your garden and send them where they belong inside a rescue Japanese beetle trap. Now with available refill lures, rescue Japanese beetle traps can be used for multiple seasons. They're made in the USA by the makers of the popular Rescue Fly and Yellow Jacket traps. Learn more at rescue.com. That's RESCUE.com.
The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Dripworks, Rise Gardens, Grip 6, Bloomin' Easy, Fleet Farm, Waltons Incorporated, Blue Ribbon Organics, Tree Diaper. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Welcome back to the Gardening Joy and Holly radio show. Farm and Garden garden in ultimate comfort. Farmer's Defense has lightweight and durable sleeves made to protect you against the elements while farming. Farmer's sleeves offer unparalleled protection of arms and skins for any farmer, gardener, or outdoor worker. Say goodbye to irritated skin and sunburns in the garden. Their sleeves offer cooling comfort protection against the elements outdoors. An alternative to thick clothing, Farmer's Defense is made of wicking material with UBF protection factor 50 plus to protect you from allergens and scratches. To find all of their great products and more, visit farmersdefense.com.
Gardening is an activity that almost anyone and everyone can do. It's only limited to what you decide that you can and can't accomplish. And oftentimes we are our most worst critics saying, well, we can't do that because of XYZ. But you really can, and there's multiple different avenues in which you can achieve gardening success, from elevated garden beds to keyhole gardening to fill-in-the-blank tool to help you be more mobile in the garden.
Right, and that's the biggest thing is sometimes people get in their head or they think about maybe their own personal expectations, or they compare themselves to others, things like that. And there's a lot that you can do no matter your mobility level. And there's, even nowadays, there's so many different aids and ideas and hacks and tricks and tips and blah, 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 where you really don't have to be limited. And the other thing is that a lot of people get stuck in this all or nothing thinking, when you don't have to be that way. You can do a little bit at a time. You can find things that work for you. And even, there's different Facebook groups for mobility. At this point, there's different social media accounts, things like that. So the help is out there. And that's one thing, is it's okay to ask for help or use an aid, whether that be something like a stool or a garden cart that you sit on, or you have your friends or family help you with part of the process because you can't lift those heavy soil bags or fertilizer bags or whatever mulch anymore. Or maybe you have like a community garden day and you all help each other, things like that. It's okay to ask for help. A lot of times you might think, well, nobody wants to help me, but if you don't ask, you don't know.
Right. You miss out. What is it? Wayne Gretzky says you miss every shot you never try to take, or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So if you don't take the shots, you're not
meaning ask.
Have delicious tomatoes.
Yeah. There you
go.
Yeah.
So
Wayne Gretzky was a very successful hockey player. For those who are not familiar with whom that...
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
There you go. And also, that's...
And Michael Scott.
Yeah.
The Office fans are cheering right now. So you can utilize stools, carts.
I talk a lot about The Office.
Yeah. Utilize stools, carts, 5-gallon buckets. Sometimes if you...
And don't worry about your weight, because they have tools and these carts and buckets and things that are manufactured for very large and heavy weight capacity.
Right. And they do have different things. There's even this like little collapsible stool that a lot of people will use sometimes for like walking around amusement parks, just to sit on when they're waiting in line. And those hold, I think, up to like 500 or 600 pounds. So you don't have to worry about that. These things are now made to
it's not 1993 anymore.
And you might not find this at your local garden center.
Nope.
So you might have to go online. And unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, I don't think there's anything wrong with having to buy things online.
No,
but you may have to expand your horizons.
Right, because these stores, you have to look at it from their perspective. Why it doesn't make sense to carry 83 of these things when one gets sold a year.
Right, and that's exactly it too. Being cognizant.
We're in a click-to-ship world.
The supply and demand, right? So you can utilize all sorts of things. I personally sometimes just like the 5-gallon bucket, or we have this like. I don't know what that thing is.
It's a big plastic tub. It's a 25-gallon plastic tub or something that's about 18 inches high.
Right. And so even for me, if I don't like the heat or being in the direct sunlight for a long time. So sometimes I'll help in the garden, do some gardening, and then I'll say I'm going to go sit in the shade for a few minutes and have some water. And you should be taking water breaks anyway, no matter what your mobility level is, no matter how fit or athletic you are, you should be drinking water, especially on some of these warmer days.
Beer is not a water.
Coffee,
wine is not a water.
Coffee is not a water.
There is their time and place for them. But
Yeah,
when you're in a
absolutely.
90-degree heat digging soil, that's not the time or place for these.
No. So, yeah. So that's something that you want to keep in mind is it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to take lots of breaks. It's okay to sit on something. It's okay to, even if you want to build your raised bed to a higher height, maybe you do something where you put it on cinder blocks, or you get kind of creative. Another thing I want to mention is stretching. And so maybe you just do some simple stretches before and after. If you
Because you're doing things here that you don't normally do. That's why
Right.
the stretching is important.
yeah, and stretching helps prevent an injury. And a lot of people don't always think about that. They think, oh, I'm just going to garden. It's not like I'm going on, to the gym. I'm going on a long walk or something like that. I'm going for a run. But you are moving your body in ways. So stretching helps warm up those muscles, gets what's called the lactic acid flowing between the muscles and the joints, etc. So stretching is important.
And whether you, and they have tools now that are accessible for longer reach, for elevation, or shorter reach, any type of distance in which you need to utilize. There's a tool that is specific. What is it called? Ergonomic. Ergonomic. That is more designed, that these companies have figured out what is the better shape of a shovel than what a traditional dirt shovel is for in the garden for people who are not regularly doing that type of activity. A dirt shovel is fine if you're, fill in the blank occupation and that's what you do for a living. But when you only dig in the garden a couple of hours a month, that becomes very uncomfortable or unnatural for you. And that's why they have these tools that have been scientifically designed where it is an easier lift or dig or scrape than a traditional your grandparents type of tool.
Right. And that's exactly it. So it's something that you want to keep in mind. I was going to say something.
But limited mobility doesn't mean no gardening.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean no anything. As long as you have the will and the desire, you can accomplish it.
Yeah, and there's things like you might not normally use some sort of like hiking pole or cane or something like that walking around your house, your yard, but maybe your garden has a little bit of uneven soil, uneven terrain. There's no shame if you have hiking poles or a cane. Just go to the local drugstore, get a cheap cane, whatever, to kind of stabilize yourself, or whatever you may have.
If you're not there yet, you probably will be at some point. We all will be there at some point.
Yeah, and there's no shame in that, and it's better to prevent things than to have to take a fall or twist an ankle or hurt yourself.
Yeah, the $7 cane's a lot cheaper than the hospital ride or the insurance claim you have to file because you fell.
Yeah, and sometimes
and then with the cane, if you're of age and you have grandchildren, you can use it to poke them.
Yeah,
as they run through the house. Slow down, Timmy.
There's lots of options for a cane, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that. That's. There's no shame in that. And again, I just want I talked about this before, but do a little bit at a time. If you
do a little, but do it often.
Yeah. So maybe once a day after the sun goes down a little bit, is lower in the sky, or early in the morning, you decide to get out there and do some weeding, and you do that every morning, every other morning or something like that. That's okay too.
Or figure out tools in which you can limit the amount of weeding you have to do. Like we're going to use weed cloth next year in our raised beds to greatly reduce, because Holly and I spent like 3 hours one afternoon weeding to everything. And 2 weeks later, it didn't look like we did anything. It looked like a pasture was seeded. And we're of age that we don't want to spend 3 hours plus in the sun doing that. So we're going to limit the amount of weeds that we can come up by using a weed cloth or a weed barrier. Well, with that being said, Holly, if you don't think you're mobile, you probably are, and you can achieve it. And summer is over. Fall has begun. Nights are getting colder. Days are getting shorter. Kids are back in school in most parts of the country, but it will all catch up with us sooner or later. And the yard still needs some love and care from us.
Yeah, just because we're basically in fall, We don't want to forget about our yards and those Japanese beetles either. They may be gone, but they're not far. Not only did they feast on your roses and berries this summer, they laid eggs in your turf so that they can start again next year. You can take a stand with Phylum's Grub Gone. Grub Gone is a non-chemical BT granule that specifically targets scare pests and their larvae. Simply apply the granule with a spreader, irrigate into the soil, and let the naturally occurring bacteria do its job.
Not only is Grub Gone easy to use, but it's the only non-chemical choice that effectively controls grubs. And the best part about it, it's non-toxic to bees and other pollinators and beneficial insects. In fact, Grub Gone has no label restrictions for use around your flowering plants, so you don't have to worry about them taking it up and killing the hive or their colony. You can find Grub Gone at phyllombioproducts.com. That's phyllombioproducts.com, PHYLLOM bioproducts.com, or grubgone.com. When we come back, hang out with us. Garden blogger Heather Blackmore will be with us. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Got a question for Joey and Holly? Send it via email anytime to gardentalkradio@gmail.com.
Need a new mattress? Choose Furlow over the other leading brands and save big, really big. Because hey, nobody ever slept better for paying thousands more for basically the same mattress. Plus, with Furlow mattress, you also get our exclusive lifetime comfort guarantee. Good for as long as you own your mattress. Comfort to comfort, dollars to dollars. Compare Furlow to the others and it's obvious. You get more bed for your buck. Wake up. Sleep better. Furlow.
Blue Ribbon Organics, providing locally made organic compost and soil blends for gardeners, farms, landscaping, and more. To find our products nearest you, visit blueribbonorganics.com.
Goodbye biting bugs and plant invaders. No More Bugs by Naturally Green Products is your answer. A product pioneered by the USDA in 14 years in business, No More Bugs has been a favorite by consumers across the country. More than a repellent, it is safe for you, your plants, pets, and home. Visit nomorebugs.net. Free shipping on orders over $50. Use code FREESHIP4ME.
Jung Seed Company is a family-owned and operated gardening company since 1907, with the largest selection of seeds and plants online. Use coupon code 10TG23 to receive 10% off your order at jungseeds.com. Again, that coupon code is 10TG23. Rootmaker starts your plants off right and keeps them going through harvest. From their seed starting trays with an innovative design that air prunes the roots to their large variety of grow bags, 1 to 60 gallons. Their products will provide you the harvest you've never seen before. Visit rootmaker.com and use coupon code radio23 to save 15% off your order at rootmaker.com.
Garden like a pro in 3 easy steps and receive customized fertilizer recommendations for your garden or lawn. Soil Savvy helps you determine what nutrients your plants need to thrive. Never again over-apply nutrients they don't need. A patented process that makes you a smart gardener. To get your soil test kit, go to mysoilsavvy.com.
Worried about watering too much or too little? Tree Diaper technology is the best way to stabilize your soil moisture in your garden, trees, or houseplants. Use coupon code GARDEN15 to save 15% off at treediaper.com. The Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Chapin Manufacturing Incorporated, Aqua-Mart, Soil Savvy, Wind River Chimes, Wisconsin Greenhouse Company, Pro Plugger, Deer Defeat, Dripping Springs Oyas, Phylum Bioproducts. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support.
Rise Gardens is a revolutionary hydroponic gardening system for your home. Instead of food traveling hundreds or even over 1,000 miles before it hits your plate, harvest the veggies, herbs, and greens you need for dinner tonight in the comfort of your home. No green thumb required knowledge. Gardening made easy with the Rise Gardens app. Step-by-step guidance from seed to harvest. A complete garden on a shelf. Comes with everything you need to grow healthy and the freshest food for you and your loved ones. Fully customize your garden to your needs and preferences. For more information, to get your Rise Gardens, visit risegardens.com.
Let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week. Heather Blackmore loves sharing her garden and everything she has learned from it. with the hopes that it will inspire others to get their hands dirty. Gardening in Zone 5B in Chicago area climate from a different zone. No worries. The ideal and the practices are pretty universal. As a former master gardener, she relies on her training to create and maintain a healthy garden, and she is a creator of her website, HereSheGrows.com. Welcome to the program, Heather.
Hi, Joey. Thanks for having me. I've been so looking forward to this ever since you reached out.
Well, I thank you for taking time out of your day, and I'll start with this. As we get to the later parts of summer and early fall, for gardeners who had not had the garden they had dreamed of this year, flowers or vegetables, what words of encouragement can you offer them that will allow them not to give up and to try it again next year?
Yeah, I think that's such a good question, because I think the most important thing we have to develop if we're going to garden is developing a thick skin. I have killed so many plants, and I tell it when I'm speaking and sharing information about my garden. I always, I'm very genuine about just how many things I've killed, and I just see it all as a learning process. I've killed a lot of plants in my garden, and it's trial and error. And I think if you accept that and accept that there will be losses, but there's also going to be a lot of triumphs and successes, and learn from those things and learn about, testing different plants and not being afraid to have something not work out for you, and being inspired to try again with something new, and just keep learning. Don't give up. I think that's the thick skin is the biggest thing. Mourn your losses briefly, get on with it, and find a new plant to try in that space. I think that's the best thing we can do to keep learning as gardeners and growing our landscapes.
Well, that ties into my next question. There are times when landscaping is done and you're just not happy with it. As you were with your patio, you changed it up. You talked about what you did not like and how you went about making that into a happy place. Talk about that experience.
Yeah, so we have a patio. My husband built it about 12 years ago. And where I went wrong is, instead of creating a plan, I always like to create a small plan, just kind of gather ideas about a plant palette that I want to have, what the site looks like, how much sun, and, what's the drainage like, and exposure and all that. And I failed to do that with that garden. I just kind of winged it. And I never liked the way it developed. I mean, the junipers that went in, I thought I was putting in skyrocket junipers, which should have been no more than 2.5 to 3 feet wide. They ended up being 6 feet wide. They were massive. And these are really narrow beds surrounding this patio. So they just swallowed up the space. They looked really gangly. They developed cedar apple rust. And once that happened, they just continued to decline. So I decided to do just look it all over, decide what I wanted to keep. And then I went about and I cleared those plants out. I potted them up and made sure that, they were going to be fine in their containers until I got around to completing this garden. We dug up the junipers, dug them out, got rid of those. And I really needed a blank slate to really get an idea, to look at this space and clear the whole area out. And then I went in and started thinking about, okay, I've got a full sun, southern exposure. It's really hot. I don't want to completely camouflage the patio, because I want to be able to look out from the patio to see my raised bed vegetable garden. And prior to doing, with the junipers there, I couldn't see any of that. It was just this ugly, gangly, these two ugly shrubs. So I also wanted to make sure it was super pollinator friendly. I wanted low maintenance. I don't want to have to be out there. I don't coddle my plants. I want plants that can make it without me having to water them constantly. I water them, get them established. For perennials specifically, the first 6 weeks or so that they go in, they get watered regularly. Trees and shrubs are watered for the first 2 years they're in the ground, making sure I'm on it with them weekly. But I don't want to have to babysit these plants. I don't have time. So that's what went into planning my plant palette. And then from there, I narrowed it down. And, I put in things like drops of Jupiter oregano and helianthus. There's one golden girl helianthus from Monrovia that I absolutely love. It's a blooming machine, and it's always full of bees. I've had more butterflies and different varieties of solitary bees and wasps around my patio ever since I redid this patio. So I knew I was on the right track with what I did, and I absolutely love how it's turned out. It's full of color, and I don't have to do a whole lot with it. It's exactly what I wanted.
And with the bees and the wasps coming in to enjoy the plants in which you have planted, they're not going to attack you or bother you because they're coming into the native areas and they're doing their native thing. They're not going to come over and go, well, I don't like you here, I'm going to sting you. They're focused on the plants.
Absolutely. And I think that's the huge misconception people have is, oh my gosh, we've got bees and wasps. It's a very dangerous environment for my children. Well, not with every bee and wasp. I mean, there are, your yellow jackets, and some of the wasps can be pretty aggressive, but these garden pollinators are, I get right up on them with my macro lens on my camera, and I'm snapping pictures. They don't care. They have one objective, and that is to gather pollen, and they're minding their business. They do not mind that I'm right in their faces. I have no trouble with them. And I absolutely love it because it's an environment that I've created for my kids. My kids have developed an appreciation for all these pollinators. They don't fear the bees and wasps because they know, they're non-aggressive species. And some of them, like the I think it's the white striped mason wasp. It's a big wasp. It's huge and it looks very aggressive. They are totally not aggressive. They are so involved in gathering pollen, and they don't care that I'm there, and I'm there all the time. And it's a lovely environment.
And you're not swatting at them either, because that causes problems when you start doing that to insects too.
Certainly not. And there's no reason to swat because with these non-aggressive pollinators, like I said, you can be right there with them, and they're just doing their thing, and they're happy as can be, and they have no interest in coming after you.
Well,
yellow
go ahead.
jackets are a story.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the yellow jackets are a different story. They're very aggressive, especially this time of year. They get kind of frenzied, and it can be a little chaotic back there with those guys. But with the rest of them, it's really interesting how many species of bees and wasps come around when you plant a garden.
And let's talk about lawns here for a moment. As a country, many of us have the mindset that a lawn has to be pristine, picture magazine perfect, requires hours of work, chemicals either applied by the homeowner or they bring that truck in that sprays and you can't walk on it or have pets on it for 48 hours. Where did we go wrong, number one? And number two, lawn care can be very easy, safe, and organic and it's okay to have some non-grass plants in that lawn.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, it all started decades ago when, aspiring to become a homeowner, as many of us do, having our own patch of grass that we manicure and, keep tip top. I think it's that ideal of ownership and successfulness. And we've, poured all of our resources into maintaining this weed-free lawn that we're just poisoning our waterways and just dumping so much chemical into it. So I also think there's an element of competition among homeowners too, who can have the best lawn. I certainly experienced that many years ago. Most of our backyard is clover, and so it's a very honeybee friendly garden. In the backyard, my husband and I have gone back and forth. He always subscribed to the 3-part series of granular applications. And so we agreed that the front yard, he could do what he wanted in the front yard, but the backyard, which is where my vegetable garden is and, the pollinator garden, I take care of that myself. And it is mostly clover. But we had neighbors in the past who would approach us about, hey, I really think you should talk to this. I've got a guy thing. They've got a guy who can come in and spray these chemicals, because it really bothered some of my neighbors that we had clover in our backyard. It wasn't this pristine landscape. And I'm seeing less of that now, because I think my neighborhood specifically, they're not having the lawn services come in as much. They're not having the wasp control come in and spray all the surfaces as they were doing, 15, 20 years ago. So I think it's becoming less of an issue, but it's still there. And it's unfortunate because it's such a poisonous thing to do. And I think having a lawn requires very little attention. Like having a clover lawn, I don't do anything to it. And even when we're in drought, when the front yard might be looking fried and brown, it's going dormant. We don't water our grass or anything. The backyard still looks completely green and lovely because it's mostly clover.
Yeah, native.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
When you talk about the chemicals, I was in the garden, I think it was earlier this year, and I smelt this terrible smell, looked up, and a quarter mile across across the parking lot, there was that truck spraying a yard and was drifting across the whole neighborhood of that chemical. And we do this for and basically to impress people we don't like, I think is a large percentile of reasons. But it's a waste. It doesn't need to be done, and it's only hurting everybody.
Right.
Because you got insects that are picking that up and are dying from it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and one point I'd like to make is, many years ago, my neighborhood subscribed to this pesticide control service, and they were spraying all the surfaces because everybody was in this frenzy about their children being attacked by wasps on their play sets and playing in the backyard. And so they were spraying all the play sets, all the fences, all the eaves of the house with this chemical agent that any pollinator that landed on it was going to die. They thought it was specific to just wasps. It was a selective pesticide. But what they didn't understand was that anything that landed on it, whether it was a monarch butterfly, a honeybee, a bumble, those are dying too. So I think I'm seeing less of that happening in our neighborhood now that there's an awareness there. And I've really, through our homeowners association and in Facebook website, I've really leaned on them. Hey, you're not just killing wasps, you're killing anything that lands on what you've sprayed. So our homeowners are moving. I think they're moving further away from doing that. I definitely don't see the pesticide truck as frequently as I used to in our neighborhood. But when you think of that on a bigger scale, when we're just a single neighborhood doing that, and if everybody's doing that, we are decimating our pollinator population foolishly.
And whether you want to accept it or not, there's a certain marketing aspect because that makes money.
Right. It does.
So you recently posted about growing sweet corn in a small raised bed. Some may think that you can't do that. Others people think you got to have a field to do it. How are you successful as growing a lot of sweet corn in a very small little raised bed?
Well, when you grow in small spaces, you're not conforming to the the spacing recommendations they make. So I plant tighter. I might plant. Really, I use my thumb and my pinky finger as a spacing. So that's about a 6-inch space when it's spread out, like the hang loose symbol that you see flashing. So I use that as my spacing technique. And I'll go through, I use the bed that I planted my corn in this year was a Vigo bed. So it's like, about 6 feet long and 2 feet wide. So I was using my spacing with my thumb and my pinky to give me a 6-inch spacing between each seed. And then I just let it do its thing, and it came up beautifully. And I had delicious sweet corn this year, and it was exciting to watch it grow too, because it grows really, once it gets going, it grows fast. And I think when you're growing in small spaces, you do have to tighten up your spacing and look for plants, vegetables, and fruits that are recommended for smaller spaces. They're showing, you might see a little symbol on a seed packet that has what looks like a terracotta pot. That means it's great for container growing. So that's going to have a smaller, it's going to take up less space in your garden, but still be a very prolific producer. And so I do look for things like that. And this year in another raised bed, I have another Vigo garden. I have one of their trellises attached to it. So I use a lot of vertical space too. And on that trellis, I grew a new variety from Renee's seeds called Incredible Escalator Climbing Zucchini. And with a little help, I just trained it on this trellis. And if you know zucchini planted, likes to take up maybe a 4x4 space, if not more. But with this incredible escalator, I was able to grow it up the trellis and then underplant the base with other things. So it was a really nice use of space with a very prolific plant.
And if you've gardened with a lot of space and you go to a space with a limited amount of space, forget everything you know. because
Right.
it doesn't transfer. But
Right.
if you have a lot of space, you can combine those small area thoughts and like double, triple your area and production, even if you have a lot of space.
Certainly. Yeah, most definitely. So with the small space, I mean, I do kind of make a plan for myself every winter. And so I make sure that I'm rotating my crops too. Sometimes it's not always possible because it's a pretty small area, but yeah, I like experimenting and I don't grow a lot of things, but I think I do pretty well with what I have. And I mean, I'm certainly not a homesteader, growing on that scale, but I just so enjoy having fresh things to offer my family, and having that vegetable garden has been a great way to teach my kids about the difference between homegrown and store-bought and what a significant difference there is.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned at the top of the interview, you're in zone 5B in the Chicago area, but you plant tropical plants in your garden. What is your practice or your trick in order to get them to grow and then get them to overwinter so they grow again next year?
Oh, sure. So tropical plants, I've loved them for decades. And so I grow like Brugmansia or Angel's Trumpet. I've got different types I've got a Musa Baju or Hardy Banana, cannas, all those things. And, they're very, very tropical. They love the warmer temperatures. So my practice is I let them go dormant. So for instance, like with the Brugmansia, or even in the Hardy Banana, I'll let a few frosts hit it. I won't let a freeze hit it, but a few frosts just to signal to the plant to go dormant. And then they'll shed their leaves. They look absolutely terrible. And then it's at that point that I'll bring those plants into my garage and just let them completely defoliate. And then I'll bring them into my basement. And I do pull back on watering because the kiss of death for overwintering tropicals is too much water. So I put them in the basement. It's completely dark down there, and it's about 58 degrees, I'd say, which is kind of on the warmer end for overwintering things, overwintering many plants. But just checking them monthly for adding a little bit of water. And I don't really measure how much water I'm putting in it. I just add enough. I don't want it seeping out of the bottom holes or anything, but just enough to give it a taste, just so it doesn't completely go, bone dry and die on me. But that's worked for me for years. And then reintroducing them slowly outside because they've been in a cool, dark place for months. So I might start reintroducing them to the light in April, depending on, weather permitting, get them in the garage and maybe put them out like you would when you're hardening off vegetables. Give them an hour in some sunlight and then move them back into the shade, and then keep extending the amount of time they spend in the light before they're outside permanently. And these are all in very sunny locations of my garden. So it can be labor intensive, especially with the Brugmansia and the Hardy Banana, because they are big plants. So my husband is a huge help, helping me move those plants in and out of the house. But they're so worth it because there's such unusual things to have in a Chicago landscape.
Yeah. Well, Heather, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered myself and our listeners. How can our listeners find out more about you and follow your journey through your garden?
Oh, sure. So I write a blog. My blog is hereshgrows.com. And you can also find me on Instagram, Heather Here She Grows, and YouTube, Heather Here She Grows, Pinterest, all the same handle. So I share everything that I'm doing and what works and what doesn't work. And I hope that it encourages other people to garden along with me.
Well, Heather, we thank you for the time you've offered us and the information.
Oh, thanks, Joey. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And when we come back, it's your garden questions and our garden answers. You're tuned into the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show.
Have a garden question? Give Joey and Holly a call now or anytime 24/7. Just dial 1-800-927-SHOW. If you can't get through, leave a message and they will call you back. Call now, 1-800-927-SHOW.
Head into Fleet Farm where you'll find everything you need. From tires to tree stands, drills to dog food, toys to tools, they've got it all. You can save even more at Fleet Farm when you join the Fleet Rewards loyalty program. You get exclusive offers and it's free to sign up. Get everything you need at a low fleet price. Shop in store or online today at Fleet Farm. Pomona's Universal Pectin is a high-quality pectin that gels reliably with low amounts of any sweetener. If you're trying to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, you'll love Pomona's Universal Pectin. Now you can make healthy homemade jams and jellies sweetened to your taste. You can use sugar or honey to sweeten. Pomona's Universal Pectin keeps indefinitely when stored in an airtight container. Easy to use, versatile, and comes with directions and recipes in every box. Find out more and where to buy at PomonaPectin.com. Also available at natural food stores and online.
Tree Hugger sprinklers are the ultimate watering device for either your newly planted or established trees and shrubs. Our sprinklers open and close around the trunk of your tree and provide 360 degrees of watering. With our adjustable valve, you can direct the water to your tree's targeted saturation zone. They come in 3 sizes, 7, 11, and 15 inches. You can purchase a Tree Hugger sprinkler at your local garden center, feed store, or hardware store. Go to treehuggersprinklers.com to find a retailer close to you. Or you can buy it directly from Amazon or treehuggersprinklers.com. If you're an independent nursery, garden center, hardware store, or feed store, you will want to stock this product. Contact the good people at Tree Hugger Sprinklers and they will get you set up. Your tree's best friend. treehuggersprinklers.com.
Make watering easy. DripWorks provides quality drip irrigation supplies and equipment to gardeners just like you for all your growing needs across the U.S. and Canada. Purchase online at dripworks.com.
The Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show is brought to you by the following: Happy Leaf LED, Root Maker, Jung Seeds, Tree Hugger Sprinklers, Verlo Mattresses, Farmer's Defense, Pomona Universal Pectin, Natural Green Products, Mantis Tillers. Find all sponsors at the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com and thank them for their support. Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy you've been with us today. It's time for your garden questions, our garden answers. If you've got a question, fire it on over here at gardentalkradio@gmail.com. That's our email address, gardentalkradio@gmail.com. Or you can send us give us a call at 1-800-927-SHOW. That's 1-800-927-7469. This question, Holly, is sponsored by Fleet Farm and fleetfarm.com.
I planted spaghetti squash, and what I have is not spaghetti squash. It's a cross of something. I planted it near zucchini and pumpkins. Could that be the reason?
Well, you've probably got a cross, but it's not because you planted it next to zucchini and squash. Those seeds have been created last year, harvested, given to you, you've planted them. So it was last year, wherever that seed was created in whatever farm in the country, that's where the cross happened. If you grow things together in like families, it's not going to affect the produce in which you have that's harvesting this year. If you save those seeds from this year and plant them next year, that's when the opportunity of that cross can be exposed, because it's taking the genetics from the pumpkin and from the zucchini and from the spaghetti squash, put them all in the seed and then growing it. That's next year if you save the seeds. We've had crosses of spaghetti squash cross with zucchini or pumpkin. It's not really the most appetizing of sorts. It's a very dense.
It's kind of woody.
Yeah, it's woody and dry and just kind of blah.
Yeah.
So you can try to see if it's something that you want to consume. It may or may not be. So that's what you got. Holly, let's go to the hotline, and we've got a question from a listener out of Chicago.
Good morning. Enjoy your show. I listen on WJOL out of Joliet, Illinois. Got tomatoes. The lower ones are red, ready to pick, and naturally somebody nibble on them like two little holes. I don't know if it's squirrels or a rabbit. Is it safe to cut that half a tomato or a quarter tomato off and pitch it, or is there diseases or you get sick from that, rabies or something? And then I get that knobby yellow cook wash, it's like a gourd, and there are bugs on there like box elder size, and they're black, and they are taking over the leaves, and they're almost done for the season, but it's amazing how big they are. I've never seen them before, and they run, and they can actually fly. They lay little golden type eggs, and then when they hatch, they're white with black legs. They're really creepy. That's anything you can spray or just leave them alone. I cut the branches off to get rid of the infested leaves. And that's about all I know about them. We just made some soup out of it, cut off the bark on it. It's pretty good. Thank you. Have a great day.
Well, thank you for calling in and asking the question. There was a two-part question there about the tomatoes and about the bugs on the squash, Holly.
Yeah, so the first one is that if you have something that's eating your tomatoes, you can go ahead and cut off the bad spot and eat the tomatoes. It's not a problem unless you know unless you see it eating it and you know it's something that's possibly toxic. For the most part, everything that eats something in your garden is probably pretty much harmless. The second one is those, I looked them up here, and they are squash bugs, and that's pretty common in late season for the squash bugs to come around to your succulent plants such as squash, even cucumbers, pumpkins, things like that. They're pretty harmless at this point. They do lay their eggs, but they're not going to cause any issues because the plants are so developed. If for whatever reason you found these squash bugs earlier in the season, you would want to get rid of them, pluck them off the plants, and just destroy them. And then also try to get rid of their eggs as well. And they are the little I guess you call them larvae. They are like almost like a whitish light green color with black legs. They do look very strange.
All right, our next question is, I'm in Zone 5A, and I'd like to know if I can still plant bush beans at this time of year, or is it too late? Well, bush beans, let's start off with bush beans take 40 to 60 days to reach maturity or reach a producing state. And if you're in the beginning stages or early portions of September, that's going to push you well past the time in which it would be feasible for them to get it. The 40 days, 60 days would be, well, you 30 in September and 30 in October, then you're pushing November 1st, and most times frost in zones 5A, 5B, it occurs anywhere from late September to the middle portions of October. So when we plant our fall crops, we want to think about, you can do a second planting of green beans, but you really need to, when is your first projected frost date? And that's an average over 10 years. So if it's October 15th, you would actually want to start planting your fall bush beans approximately 80 days, 70 to 80 days before that frost date. So you can allow plenty of time for those plants to get up, be mature, and then you can be harvesting them in late September and early October until that frost. Now, also keep in mind that bush beans are a heat-loving plant. It is a summer crop. So as the days get cooler and the nights get longer and colder, those beans are not going to produce the way they were producing in July and August. So you want to keep that in mind. Pole beans, on the other hand, in addition to this, pole beans take 70 to 80 days to reach maturity. Now, with both of these beans, we have found that by planting them in the spring, maintaining them, meaning harvest regularly, we can have bean production all the way up until that frost time, or the plants get so disraveled that insects take over, or they've just been exhausted from production of beans, that we are able to harvest them all the way up till frost. Prior years, and what many people are taught, is that bush beans, 40 to 60 days and to reach maturity, to reach a harvesting state, and then they'll produce for 2 to 3 weeks, and they're done. You pull them up and you start over. That's not the case. You keep the hydration to them, and you keep harvesting the pods before they get to a mature state, and you are going to have more green beans or yellow pod beans or royalty purple beans than you know what to do with. So no, you can't plant them now, but if you plan ahead and you maintain your plants and keep them hydrated, you won't have to plant late in the summer. You'll be able to continue to harvest those in which you planted in the spring. Well, with that being said, we are out of time, and we thank you for yours. Miss any portion of the program today, would like to revisit, you can do that by going to our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, and clicking into the Season 7 tab at the top of the page, and catching up on all past episodes and seasons. or you can send us an email to gardentalkradio@gmail.com, and we will send you a link to the program in audio form. Tune in next week to the program where we'll be discussing growing indoors over winter, as well as end-of-season lawnmower and small engine maintenance, things we need to do so our equipment is functional next year. Our guest from kidsgardening.org, Emily Shipman, will be with us, and we'll answer your garden questions. So until next week, for
Holly Baird,
I'm Joy Baird, and we will see you in the garden.